Welcome to my channel. Today, I'm going to discuss a unique action about a special forces member who robbed a bank using an ambulance. Will, a former soldier who loses his job after retirement, opens the film. His wife required immediate surgery at this time due to her terrible illness. Will, however, is quite impoverished and was forced to contact the hospital for help paying the charge. When the hospital learned that he was cash-strapped, they quickly disconnected the call. What a bunch of bastardly, unappreciative capitalists. Will, a veteran, is forced to seek assistance from his closest buddy Danny, a rich lawyer's personal bodyguard, since he has no other option. Danny's day work mostly entails maintaining the posh cars for his attorneys. Poor Willie, he feels so very envious when he sees a mansion full of expensive cars. Although they gave their lives in service to their nation, Danny said that they felt wronged by the system. When Danny's buddies showed there, they all started to get ready with their weapons. It was discovered that these individuals were preparing to steal money from the bank. Will is reluctant to join Danny's group, but Danny persuades him that all he has to do is drive while the gang takes care of everything else. Will was forced to accept, and they then began their task. They began by driving and stopping beside a parking lot. Danny and his friends claimed to be bank workers when they broke into the building. Sadly, two police officers went by the bank. Due to his discomfort, one of the officers chose to wait outside. The assassins of Danny are now hiding within the structure. Couple assassins hiding beneath the desk are yelling at them to stop talking or they will fire. Captain Monroe began flirting with the bank clerk even though he was unaware of it. He struck up a conversation by stating, "I want to ask you to dinner, but the lady says it's not convenient right now." Monroe immediately sensed something was up when she noticed the nameplate on the counter for the personnel. Danny immediately threatened Monroe with a gun after that. "Don't attempt anything amusing because we're aiming two automatic machine guns at you. The bank has $32 million in total." The signal was sent to Danny's teammate to pick them up. However, the automobile tragically broke down in the middle of the road. When Rose's partner saw this, tiered to assist with the car's repair. Then, when Danny's teammates started to withdraw, he saw them yelling. The motorist struck the police cruiser, which prevented Monroe's colleague from firing. The driver kept firing at the person who was assisting him, and a shootout between the two sides ensued. When they heard shooting, the police officers on patrol in the vicinity rushed to the site. Danny returns inside the bank and uses the elevator to go out after being unable to enter via the front gate. Outside, the situation was rather disorganized. The female lifeguard and her colleague were also given the order to go to the bank to rescue people at this point. Special forces and a number of police cruisers hurried to the location. Running along the parking lot with Danny, Monroe was held captive. Soldiers from the special forces assaulted the entry blockers at the same time. The gang's driver received a headshot right away. Monroe suddenly felt inspired to defend Danny. Fortunately, quickly started shooting while rescuing Danny. Danny urges Will to get inside the vehicle right away despite his intense remorse. If not, everyone will perish. The two were forced to go. The gang lost a great deal of members and came dangerously close to extinction. The bank's robbery became well known. Detectives and special forces from the police promptly closed all highways. Danny took a quick glance before entering right away. Danny is preparing himself for the escape as they are being cornered. While this was happening, Will wondered whether there was a firefight outside. Atop the building, 7 SWAT officers are already prepared to take action. The SWAT squad began kicking through the door. Officer Mark then found Monroe, who was laying on the ground, quite fast. Monroe then slipped into a coma. Danny and Will are now forced to flee back to the parking lot after the investigators discovered Danny's location and discovered that they were plotting an assault. Then a hot doctor by the name of Cam showed there to rescue police officer Monroe. Danny opened fire to block the road just as they were ready to depart in the ambulance, at which time the special forces came after them. Danny attempts to flee via the parking lot, but the cops catch up with him. Willow and Danny are about to pass away. However, as the investigative officer approached the vehicle door, he saw a loudly yelling camera telling everyone to leave since the patient was in a severe state. Cam just saved the robber and they feel alive again. Danny grinned and said he was sorry for accidentally pointing the pistol towards Cam. In order to dodge the helicopter patrol, the ambulance ran through an alley rather than crossing a freeway. Cam used the chance to flee by freely spraying the fire extinguisher. Danny then instantly threatened her by pointing a pistol at her. However, Monroe later had a heart attack, forcing Cam to return to rescue him before more people started to riot. Throughout the police conversation, it was discovered by the investigating officer that the ambulance had been robbed. During the flight, the chopper checks the ambulance temperature with a thermometer. The technician explained to the cops that this ambulance had a V8 engine and can go at a high speed. In order to coordinate with other police patrols, the police were compelled to dispatch extra helicopters. Another copy was listening in on the talk inside the automobile at the same time. When a line of police vehicles blocked the ambulance path to to the main route. It had just arrived there. They had no option but to turn around and face the police officers. When the police realized this, they were forced to avoid the ambulance rather than confront it. As a consequence, Cam attempted CPR at this point from Monroe, but it was unsuccessful. Danny had to sprint to the rear so that two people could work together to provide CPR to the policeman who was as it was moving quickly. Danny finished doing CPR and went back to the driver's seat. The automobile eventually came to a halt, but Will was able to brake in time for the ambulance to arrive just in front of the cliff. They all go down the cliff because the police vehicle pursuing them couldn't stop in time. They seized the chance to rapidly reverse the vehicle and flee. Danny phoned the gang leader Williams since he had nowhere to hide. Danny now has $16 million and has Williams pledged to share the money in hopes that he can assist them. William inquired as to how Danny might assist. William was instructed by Danny to send the lads over to assist him divert the officer. Instantly gave the lads the go-ahead to prepare after learning that he could make that simple and sweet money. Danny once again contacted his buddy who works at the garage and begged him to use the quickest vehicle to get him to safety. The chopper was now approaching him quickly. The police chief followed the ambulance intently. Will is surrounded by the enemies and has no way out. Numerous police vehicles were destroyed as the ambulance hurriedly called through the surrounding traffic while driving into the intersection center. The moment Annie saw the sheriff was pursuing him, he snapped, opened the vehicle door, and held Cam as a hostage. "Shoot at me and I'll blow the chick's head off." The sheriff is pressured into making a short-term concession, so he backs down. Danny hastened back to the driver's cab after that. The officer gave the order to halt the roadway at this point. The two state police agencies have to cooperate. Danny had been engaged in a bank robbery since he was 17 years old. It comes out that his father was a sharpshooter who murdered 3 cashiers, 6 bankers, and 6 bank tellers. FBI agent is a classmate of Danny's, thus he is aware of the reasons for Danny's restraint. Danny doesn't want to hurt anybody. All he wants is a normal existence. However, the man still made the decision to commit theft. During the last 10 years, he has stolen 37 banks. It's now the 38th bank. Monroe found himself in a precarious predicament at this point. When her senior doctor, who is away on vacation, picks up the phone, the whole vehicle floor is covered in blood. In case she is planning anything bad, Danny feels compelled to shoot her in the head the whole time. The surgeon then uses a video chat to advise Cam on how to execute the operation while riding in a death-defying ambulance. Due to Will's military experience, the investigating officer overheard the exchange and decided to utilize his knowledge to assist Cam while Danny was in charge of driving so that the procedure could be performed gently and without any mishaps. She then began searching for the bullet. Everyone believed Monroe had passed away. Kim said she had saved Monroe's life when the cops asked her to immediately conceal behind the stretcher. The personnel of the investigative department opted to shoot nonetheless since they didn't care. The police then gave the order for their fighting buddies to momentarily withdraw, leaving just 2 cars next to the ambulance. Danny then chastises the officer. "Monroe was on the verge of death until Cam rescued his behind, but you still want to shoot us." The cops then say sorry, saying they had no idea you had saved his life. Then Danny begins progressively going insane. Cam begins to joke about with Danny, which prompts Danny to shoot her. Cam will then slam on the brakes, making Danny miss his shot. The two men who were previously closest friends are now arguing vehemently inside the vehicle. Cam called the cops as soon as the two started fighting. By claiming that he is a combat veteran, the cop is now coercing someone who is eager to surrender, and if he disobeys, he may spend up to 30 years in prison. The policeman told Will to consider his wife. The detective then quickly calls Cam and says that Will is the weak link, so Cam has to find a way to sway him. Will quickly contacted his wife and pretended to be seeking for work. He advised caution after his wife reported that the nearby bank had been robbed today. His heart softened as we turned to gaze at his kid on the phone's display. When Cam questioned his wife's position after seeing this, she said that the operation was costly, not to mention the expense of extra medical insurance and follow-up care. William's group was now waiting for Danny beneath the bridge. Police learned that he would abruptly shift course, supposing that his opponent was attempting to divert his attention. In order to drew the helicopter, Danny got out of the automobile. When the aircraft was ready to touch down, Danny started shooting right away and then got back in the vehicle. The ambulance swung and rocked as the aircraft descended. They pursued one another on the roadway once again. They were finally able to escape the cops' pursuit and arrive to the spot that William had previously chosen. They have additional, similar ambulances ready here. Then, to create a distraction, 3 similar ambulances were driven into the roadway by William's men. While another rushes west, one man's sprint ceased. That is deceit right there. The drivers of the 3 ambulances are competent. The officers were alarmed by the whole situation. William's kid abruptly leaped out of the vehicle. The ambulance moved swiftly forward. The motorist was identified by police to be fleeing, but an armored vehicle was advancing on him. Everyone was told to hide by the sheriff, but it was already too late. The car-mounted automatic Gatling gun then begins shooting at the police officer at a rate of 6,000 rounds per minute. The squad leader was ruthlessly shot to death, and the situation was utter chaos. William saw the carnage and afterwards felt quite pleased. William's son is accidentally murdered when Officer Mark tackles him while pursuing William's son. Danny's ambulance then crashes into William's covert location as he is lamenting his sole demise. Danny feels ecstatic since he believes the situation is ended. Williams was inconsolable when Danny arrived, and he told him that other people had perished. It ended when I handed him the cash. Then Danny delivers $8 million to William. William overheard his subordinate indicate that there were police inside the ambulance at this point in the audio recording of their discussion. Danny was being questioned when he said, "You came a nurse and a policeman. They have seen too much now." When Danny objects to Will's insistence on removing the nurse and the police officer, Will and his gang go into full-on monkey mode. Danny was being coerced by William to shoot and murder, but he killed the whole Williams group by opening fire. My wonderful brother Will is brave enough to touch him. Danny then shot William in the face to put an end to the fight. Will and Danny fled downstairs as the rest of the Williams gang engaged them in a battle to the death while armed. Will had just gotten inside the vehicle. Unfortunately, a camera fired at him. Cam didn't know she had shot the incorrect person till later. Danny sprinted in their direction, assaulting and running away again. Once, the ambulance is running away. The driver's cab now seems to be demonic possessed. This time, no one was prepared to surrender up as the task team in the helicopter pursued them. Outlaws are on one side, while a special unit that wants to exact revenge on their slain colleagues is on the other. Will, meantime, was gravely hurt. His heart is pounding erratically. Cam had to provide first aid to him once again. They didn't want to flee to the hospital this time, so the ambulance drove off once again. In the end, Danny had to stop the vehicle in front of the hospital gate because he couldn't let his brother bleed to death. The task force rapidly pursued dozens of SWAT troops who were aiming at the ambulance and prepared to open fire at any time, while several dozen police officers followed closely behind. The pistol Danny sees in the vehicle is really a police weapon. Sedan. He believes Monroe killed Will. Danny kept aiming the rifle towards the police officer's head. Cam acknowledged that it was her that shot Will. Danny is enraged and claims that William is the reason he turned against him. That must be what occurs when you sip, I suppose. In front of the cops, he finally made a promise to murder Cam. The automobile door was just opened by Danny. The snipers have Danny in their sights. He screamed and leapt out of the ambulance, but the person who fired the shot wounded him in the chest. Since Will was the better brother, it came out that he was the shooter instead of Danny. Will had handed Cam the money they had stolen before telling Cam that he wanted to donate the money to his wife. Will picks us to dupe his closest buddy into falling into a trap. Will was then brought to the hospital and put in a safe place. Will may be facing a 30-year jail term, but he has helped the police catch criminals, so that's worth something. His sentence might be shortened by a few years at most. I appreciate your attention. Remember to hit like and subscribe to the channel if you find it interesting to help us out. See you in the next films.